Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel R-tsy Nature, and I'm R-tsy. Today I'm gonna do a reaction video about geographic now of Indonesia. Especially I'm Indonesian myself, and I want to try to react to this video because it's actually interesting. I've ever watched it once, like, I don't know, maybe a long time ago, but I think there should be kind of evaluation, maybe about pronunciation, especially I'm Indonesian and I know a lot about my own country, of course. My ethnic is actually Japanese, but my parents started to move from Malang to Bali, and then they rented a house somewhere in here, and then they started to buy a house. I think it was after I was born. So yeah, that's how I'm here. And fun fact, I live in a city near the borderline of a province. So I live in Cirebon city. It's called Cirebon, and it's still in West Java, and it's really close to Central Java. This city has a lot of influence from Central Java. So here we don't really use Sundanese for communicating, but some village or some part of the city, they use Sundanese, and some use Javanese, but it's like Cirebon Javanese, because I think Cirebon Javanese and Javanese in general sounds very different. So maybe we can just start to react the video.
Hey everybody, so if you don't know anything about Indonesia, basically all you have to know is that it's kind of like the Hawaii of the Muslim world, but it's like huge. It's like the biggest state, and with orangutans. And that's it, just no punchline. Let's just go to the intro song.
Okay.
It's time to learn geography now! Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbie. So as some of you know, I've been to Indonesia one time on one island for like 3 hours. I ate one dish, so basically I'm like the Indonesia expert, right?
Okay.
Well, if not, I'm kind of like the only guy on YouTube doing full profile videos like this. So for now, you'll just have to kind of deal with me for like the next 12 or so minutes.
He's an expert.
Default. Alright, so again, if you don't know anything about Indonesia, it's basically like if the Middle East and South Asia had an incredibly colorful, loud, somewhat explosive set of babies. Like thousands of them. Okay, that doesn't really help. First of all, Indonesia is the world's largest archipelago nation, located right where the Indian Ocean meets the Pacific Ocean on the incredibly clustered set of islands, making 6 countries known commonly as Nusantara, or the Malay Archipelago. Indonesian Archipelago. Sure, whatever makes you happy. Indonesia actually has land borders with 3 of these countries, East Timor, Papua New Guinea, and Malaysia, on the biggest island, Borneo, or Kalimantan, which is one of the world's only 2 triple split nation islands, the other one being Cyprus. Although technically if you...
Wait. He forgot about one country there. He forgot about Singapore, because it's really close to Indonesia. Like, you can just cross the sea and then you reach the Singapore. So it's quite close though. So okay. Just continue.
The UN buffer zone is kind of like 4 entities, but the UN isn't a country, whatever, just watch the Cyprus episode. The country is divided into 34 provinces, 5 of which have special administrative statuses, with the capital and most populous city, Jakarta, located on Java, the world's most populous island, with nearly half of the entire population of Indonesia in it. The largest cities after Jakarta are Surabaya and Bandung, both located on Java Island, and Medan, located on Sumatra. Jakarta Soekarno-Hatta International, Bali's Ngurah Rai International in Despansar, and Surabaya's Juanda International. Now here's where things get a little
okay, talking about the airport, and I've ever been to airport, and it was, I think, in Juanda Airport in Surabaya, and it was really huge. So I admit that it was really huge. But I'm not sure about the other airport, but that's how I know that Juanda is really huge airport. And I admit it, and it was like only once in my life, I think, that I've been there. So yeah.
Today, there are still arguments claimed as to exactly how many islands Indonesia has. The National Coordinating Agency for Surveying and Mapping says Indonesia has about 13,500. The National Institute of Aeronautics and Space Agency says that it has about 18,300, whereas the Indonesian government claims
Yeah.
about 17,500.
It's still
But whatever the point is,
debatable
there's a
about.
lot of them. Over 8,800 have names, and over 900 of them are permanently inhabited. You would think they are the country with the most islands, but surprisingly, Finland and Canada beat them. But a lot of their islands are kind of like boop-a-doop, little islands in the lakes, so does it really count?
Yes.
I guess. Now let's talk about the 5 special administrative provinces. They are Aceh, Yogyakarta, West Papua and Papua, and the capital Jakarta. Now, no surprise, the capital Jakarta acts as its own political entity. Lots of countries do that. But what about the others? First, Aceh. Aceh is kind of like the black sheep of Indonesia. It's the only province in which Sharia law is fully implemented. Also, they kind of have like a ton of oil, so yeah, they've kind of asserted a very independent ideology that sets them apart as
That's true,
autonomous from the rest of
actually.
Indonesia. Then you have Yogyakarta, which is the only region that is still governed by a pre-colonial monarchy. The Sultan of
Yeah.
Yogyakarta, who acts
It's
as
the
a
only
hereditary
region with
governor.
monarchy.
Otherwise, we get the 2 Papuas, which collectively used to be the province called Irian Jaya, but then in 2003 they got split into 2. Basically, this is the place that has the least in common with the rest of Indonesia. It has a culture and background closer to their cousins across the border in Papua New Guinea. So then why is this
Yeah.
part of Indonesia? Well, long story short, Indonesia was basically like, well, now that we have our full sovereignty, we get everything that the Dutch colonized. But the people of Papua were not too happy, so then Indonesia was like, all right, we'll give you a vote to stay or leave. However, we would strongly implore you to make the right decision.
I'm not sure about that,
So
though.
they voted to stay in. A lot of people complained. There's still some current opposition, and to this day, the area has a relatively high level of autonomy.
I mean, like, as far as I know that about Papua in the history, that when when Indonesia was, I mean, like, has been freed, and as far as I remember, that Papua hasn't freed at all. So like,
we can't help you with the independent, but you should join us.
as far as I remember, it that's how it happens. So correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not 100% sure about this, because that's as far as I know from what I've learned at school. So yeah.
Autonomy, and the government kind of just leaves them alone, except for when it comes to mining for resources. Oh, and the South Maluku area also kind of has like an independence dispute thing kind of going on, but the major opponents to the Indonesian government are primarily based in the Netherlands. Then you have the strange Riau Islands, which look like they should belong to Malaysia, but they don't, even though they have a strong Malay-derived culture. Then you have the Ambalat Sea Block, which has a ton of oil that both they and Malaysia argue over. So that essentially covers most of the administrative divisions of
And we have like another archipelago that is dispute, especially with China, and it's called Natuna Archipelago. So it's really complicated actually, because we use ZEE, if you know what I mean. That's how it says. So it says that we have territory 200 miles away from the outsider island, I think the most corner island, but China has their own territory law, and they don't use which is an international law that I know from geographic, I think. Yeah, I think it's geographic. So that's how you call it. I don't know. So yeah, it's really complicated actually, about Natuna Archipelago between Indonesia and China, and also especially in South South China Seas, I think. So South China Seas. So it's like the dispute area of Indonesia, Malaysia, and also I think with Philippines too, and also with China, and it's really complicated and so terrifying if we are talking about it like farther. So yeah.
Indonesia. Some of the most notable spots of interest in Indonesia might include the National Monument and Museum, Royal Keraton Yogyakarta Palace, Ratu Boko, the Magelang and chicken-shaped churches, Borobudur, disputed to be the largest Buddhist temple in the world, Maimun Palace, the Taman Sari Underground Mosque, the Equator Monument, the Pura Ulun Danu Bratan Lake temples. Yeah, try to say that 5 times fast. Pura Ulun Danu the Batan Lake.
Okay, so the correct pronunciation is Pura Ulun Danubratan. That's how Indonesian pronounce it. Pura Ulun Danubratan. Okay.
The Millennium Bridge, the Sacred Monkey Temple, the Hellmouth or Elephant Cave, the 7-story pagoda of Sibu, the smoked mummy villages of Aikim and Jiwika in Papua, or if you're lazy, you can just go to the Taman Mini Indonesia Indah Park, which kind of has like a bunch of replicas of all the famed sites in Indonesia. Oh, and keep in mind, there's Dutch colonial-style buildings all over, too many.
Yeah. So between those monuments that I've visited, it was only 2. So Borobudur Temple and Taman Mini Indonesia Indah, or we abbreviate it into TMII, but we say TMII because that's how Indonesian pronounce it.
Ancient temples and pagodas to list, and no matter how many buildings and landmarks are built, they will never compare to what Mother Nature has done. Which brings us to... Indonesia's Land is like that one ex we all had back in our 20s that we trusted a stupid friend to hook us up with. Super attractive, but almost killed you a few times. Indonesia lies on what is labeled as the prehistoric continental shelf known as Sundaland, which during the Ice Age times pretty much connected all of the islands together before the Wallace Line until the ice melted and filled in the gaps. Now this is where things get incredibly messed up. Not only is Indonesia right in the worst part of the Ring of Fire, but the country is basically smashed between 3 converging major continental plates. The Eurasian, the Pacific, and the Australian plates, with dozens of minor plates and rifts like the Sunda, Timor, Banda, Molucca, and so on. This in return gives Indonesia over 400 volcanoes, disputably more than any in the world, with over 150 active ones, making it the most volcanically active country in the world as well. This means on a daily basis, Indonesia experiences on average about 4 earthquakes a day, ranging anywhere between the small, timid 3 to a noticeable 6 on the Richter scale. And you never know where or when they will happen.
That's true.
Impressive. Nonetheless, volcanoes can be a good thing, especially when concentrated close to the equator, as the warmer, humid climate allows moisture and minerals to coalesce, creating some of the most fertile land on the planet. This is why places like Hawaii and Iceland are so radically different despite both being volcanic islands. In the end, Indonesia got blessed with a flourishing abundance of flora and fauna, the second highest concentration in the world after Brazil, many of which being endemic species like the Rafflesia arnoldi and the Titan arum, the largest flowers in the world, which each smell like rotting corpses. And at over 180, they also have the highest concentration of mammals out of anywhere in the world. Nonetheless, the national animal is actually a reptile, the largest in the world at 3 meters long, the famous Komodo dragon, which you can find a bunch of on Komodo Island, which is where they get their name from, and they can kill people.
Yes.
Just a heads up. And the surprisingly not national animal, even though everybody knows and loves them, the only great ape in Asia, orangutans, are only found on this archipelago as well. By the way, they look docile and quiet, but orangutans can rip off your arm if you anger them.
Yes.
So don't. Otherwise, the largest mountain, Jaya, is located in the east in Papua.
Wait a minute. It's not Puncak Jaya Wijaya, but it's Puncak. We say C as ch. So you better I mean you're mispronouncing. It's Puncak Jaya Wijaya. So yeah, it's actually the highest mountain in Indonesia, and so yeah, it's so far away from where I live. So yeah.
The longest river, the Kapuas, flows on Kalimantan, or Borneo Island, starting in the east, emptying into the South China Sea. The largest lake, as well as the largest volcanic lake in the world, Lake Toba, can be found on Sumatra. This is also the site of the largest speculated volcanic explosive eruption on Earth that essentially created a worldwide volcanic winter. The eruption was so big that you can literally observe ashes from the explosion that went as...
It's not only Toba, though. I mean, we also have a few mountains that damage like all over the world, and I remember that I read somewhere that I think it was Krakatau or Rinjani that made the world dark for like 7 years straight. So that's how horror stories inspired from those darkness years. From those darkness years. Okay.
As far as Malawi in East Africa. Remember, guys, Mother Nature is beautiful, but if she wants, she can kill you. Close to Puncak Jaya
That's
is
correct.
Grasberg, the largest gold and copper mine in the world. And on Mount Ijen on Java, which spews out blue lava, all over you can find intrepid sulfur miners that literally go into the base of the volcanic craters, risking health
I've ever
just to
been
get
there
raw
too.
sulfur ores. Otherwise,
Kawah
you have other
Ijen.
anomalies like the Sidoarjo mud volcanoes, the three-colored
And
Lake Kelly.
again, it's not Sidoarjo. It's Sidoarjo. It's a city. It's like a town in somewhere in Java Island, in East Java, to be more specific. But I haven't been there, even though it's quite close, maybe like around a few hours of driving, but I'm not sure how many hours. So yeah.
In Flores and the Cacaban Island Jellyfish Lake. Too many strange places. To this day, Indonesia is the #1 producer of palm oil, cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, coconut, and vanilla. Some national dishes might include things like rendang, satay, or satay, gado-gado,
It's
lontong,
satay.
ketupat, papeda, ikan bakar, pempek, tumpeng, lemang, and the national dish, nasi goreng, which basically just means fried rice, which has no exact recipe. You can mix it up and kind of do whatever.
And that's true. Actually, the what makes it special, I mean fried rice, is the soy sauce. It's actually sweet soy sauce. So I don't know, I'm not sure if you can find it outside Indonesia, but yeah, that's how makes it special. So yeah, it's sweet soy sauce.
Want to it. Oh, and keep in mind, Malaysia might argue that some of these dishes belong to them, but that's a whole other story tied in with history and culture. We got time. Why not talk about it? Now, there's a lot of curious mysteries when it comes to Indonesia's people. Like, how did they become predominantly Muslim? Or what's the whole deal with them in Malaysia? Or wait, this guy is considered an Indonesian? What? First of all, the country has about 263 million people, making it the 4th most populous country in the world, with the largest population of Muslims as well. Now, here's the thing.
That's
in a sense,
true.
yes, 95% of the population is considered native Indonesian, but that's an incredibly broad term considering that Indonesia has about 300 different ethno-linguistic groups split up across all the island regions of the country. If you look at a map with the actual ethnic group breakdown, it kind of looks something like this. Nonetheless, the two largest parent ethnic groups are the Javanese that make up about 40%, the Sundanese that make up about 15%. Otherwise, the rest of the population is primarily made up of smaller groups and tribes that have only around 2 to 3% each, like the Batak, the Sulawesi, the Balinese, Minangkabau, Betawi, Papuan, Dayak, and so on. Finally, about 5% are non-indigenous Indonesians like Chinese, Arabs, Indians, and even a few Europeans. They also use the Indonesian rupiah as their currency, they use the Type-C plug outlet, and they drive on the left side of the road. Here's where things get a little confusing. Culture and language. The one thing that kind of unites all Indonesians is that they share the national language Bahasa Indonesia, which means the Indonesian language. However, Bahasa Indonesia is actually kind of like a lingua franca to many of the people, as Indonesia is the world's largest trilingual country. In addition to Bahasa Indonesia, most people speak their own mother tongue as well as English.
Myself, English, it's actually not my third at all. Like most Indonesian, like at least they can speak like 2 until 3 languages, and it's excluding English. And yes, that's a fact. And I myself can speak like Indonesian, and Javanese, Sundanese, and so English is my fourth language. So, because I often speak English like on the internet only, not in real life, like really, because I never been I never been meeting any foreigners in my life. I think it was only once in my life, and it was when I had some kind of New Year vacation to Jogja, and I met Korean guys, and it was really nice. So yeah, English is not my third language at all, but it's my fourth language, which is weird because first of all, my parents is Japanese, so they speak Japanese like every day, like in daily basis. But we speak Indonesian like in daily life, because in our neighborhood we speak Indonesian, like we speak Indonesian very often, because some people here speak don't really speak Javanese, like some of them speak Sundanese, which makes me confused sometimes, but I kind of understand what they say. And I also understand Malay a bit, because it's actually the root language of Indonesian, which I knew from 3 years ago from my Indonesian teacher. So yeah, that's the fact.
English, they caught on quick when they realized it was the money language. The funny thing is, even though the Javanese make up the largest people group, the Javanese
Yes.
language is not an official language. Technically, it could have been, but then that would have favored one people group over all the others, which would have caused tension, so they kind of had to choose like a neutral default. Plus, Javanese is like really hard to learn, and the original writing system, although very beautiful, is
That's
incredibly difficult to
that's
write. Nonetheless, at nearly 100 million speakers, this makes Javanese the largest non-official minority language in the world.
Yes.
And that's why the Bahasa Indonesia language is so strange. It's not even technically indigenous to Indonesia, but more Malay-derived. To this day,
Yes.
people who speak Bahasa Indonesia can understand somewhere around 60 to 70% of what their neighbors are saying in Malaysia. The biggest difference, though, would be the loan words, as Indonesia took quite a bit of influence from the Dutch back in colonial times. For example,
Yes.
kantor versus kantor, doctor versus dokter, mantel, mantel,
Mantel.
oma, opa, wortel, wortel. Speaking of the Dutch, quick history lesson. Hindu kingdoms, Buddhist kingdoms, Islamic
Yes.
kingdoms. The Portuguese come in quickly, but then the Dutch flock in. Japan comes in for a
Yes.
couple of years and decimates a huge chunk of the population. Independence, republic, a
And fun fact, Dutch has colonized us for over 3 centuries, which basically 350 years in straight. But to be more specific, it's actually 348 years that I've ever read somewhere. I think, yeah, it was not really 350 years, but in history book that we learn at school, they said that it's 350 years of colonizing. So yeah, and we were colonized by Japan as well for 3.5 years, and it was very terrifying colonization, like in history. So yeah.
R-tsy years, controversial incidents and fights with ethnic Chinese, Timorese, and Papuan peoples. Suharto
Yeah.
falls, Reformation period begins, and here we are today. In Indonesia, all citizens are required to register under one of 6 recognized religion categories: Islam, Protestant, Catholic,
Yeah.
Hindu, Buddhist, and Confucianism. If you don't identify...
Yeah, that's true. That, like, even though you're atheist or agnostic, you should be registered as one of them. Like some of my friends, for example, they actually agnostic, but because they have Muslim parents, so they registered as Muslims. So yeah, it's kind of complicated actually, but that's how it is.
With either, then sorry. Prior to Islam entering around the 13th century, Indonesia was actually primarily Hindu and Buddhist. It's disputed on how exactly Indonesia became prevalently Muslim. Some people will say that it's because of the Arab traders that came by in the early first millennium. Others will say that maybe it had to do with the Malacca Sultanate conquest that fought against the Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms. And the truth is, both might be right. Inevitably, Bali became like the last sort of haven for whatever Hindus were left. The eastern Nusa Tenggara region and the Papuas remained predominantly Christian as the Dutch and Portuguese shared the gospel. Islamic culture in Indonesia is a little different from what it looks like in the Middle East. For one, most mosques don't have the typical dome structure, and actually many of them...
Fun fact, this kind of mosque, or maybe a musalla, we call it like Suharto Mosque. We call it Suharto Mosque because he was the one who designed it. That's, as far as I know, that's how what happened, but you can correct me if I'm wrong by comment below, of course.
Resemble Hindu temples like the Demak Great Mosque. When a family member dies, their relatives might often come together and pray for a whole week, and then again on the 40th day, and then on the year anniversary, and then on the 500th day, and so on. Also, the night before Eid al-Fitr, the youth...
That's true. I mean, especially for Muslim, Indonesian Muslims in here, we celebrate their kind of an anniversary of someone's death, especially if you're like a very influence person, like maybe a president or maybe an owner of a school, like the owner of Islamic boarding school. They would like celebrate the anniversary of your death to like just pray for them. And I experienced it a lot, especially when I was on boarding school, and it was really nice, especially because there would be like a carnival. So yeah, it was really amazing actually, but also nice. So I'm kind of proud to be Indonesian, to be honest, because you will be remembered when even though you are dead. So yeah.
Might gather and go around neighborhoods reciting the takbir. Those are some things you don't really typically find in the Middle East. Clothing modesty customs are pretty loose. Not all Muslim women wear hijabs. However, the ones that do might also complement it with Western clothing, like branded t-shirts with skin-tight sleeves and jeans. When I was in Indonesia, I saw a hijab-wearing woman with short sleeves and capri pants exposing her calf. I was like, can they do that? Now, in terms of culture, again,
actually,
it depends on where you are, and many indigenous people still follow ancient traditions. Everything from the Minangkabau candle dance to the gamelan players of Yogyakarta, Wayang Javanese shadow puppetry, Balinese festivals, Sumatran pencaksilat martial art tournaments.
And again, it's not pencak, it's pencaksilat. Just so you know, it's pencaksilat, not pencaksilat. It's just trying to correct it, okay?
Motif paintings of the Kalimantan tribes, the deadly pasola game played by Sumba peoples, Karbeng cow racing on Madura Island, the strange burial traditions of the Toraja people, and everywhere you can find those pointy longhouses. Otherwise, some notable people of Indonesian descent might include people like the first president Sukarno, Gajah Mada, R.A. Kartini,
and again, Gajah Mada, it's Gajah Mada. It's Gajah Mada, okay?
Habibi, Iko Uwai.
Wait, for so B.J. Habibie, he's actually if you know the nowadays public airplanes nowadays were designed by him. If you know, just in case you don't know about B.J. Habibie, why he's such a big influence for Indonesia, because he's the one who designed the recent airplanes like especially for public airplanes. So yeah, you you guys should thank him, because without him there will be no public airplanes right now that can filled by uh tens of people or maybe hundreds of people. I don't know, because as far as I remember, when I watch a movie about him, maybe you can watch it. It's called Habibi and Ainun, and it's like a biographic movie about him, Habibi and Ainun. Yeah, and I think there's kind of a saga, like Habibi Ainun first and Habibi and Ainun two. But I recommend a lot the first one, because that's how you can know the history about him designing the recent airplanes. Yeah, and eco-wise, he's known as like in action movies. I think I remember that he was part of a movie in America, but I'm not sure what was it. So you can comment down below if you know which movies that he stared at. So yeah.
Yayan Ruhian, Sisip
Yeah,
Arif
that's true.
Rahman, Agnes Monica, Iwan
Yes.
Fals, Angun, Megawati Sukarno Putri, the Hartono brothers, and YouTubers Brian Emmanuel and Raditya Dika. Now, it's so hard to cover Indonesia.
Brian Emmanuel is actually Rich Brian. Maybe, because he's kind of a very popular rapper around the world, which some people know.
This culture, because there's so many different people groups, each with their own cultures. It's insanely colorful and rich. I wish we could cover more, but we gotta move on to some diplomatics, shall we? Okay, so Indonesia is basically like the kingpin of Southeast Asia, with the largest population and economy, as well as being a member of the G20. Therefore, they know how to manage relations. First of all, the rest of the Muslim nations in the Middle East generally get along with Indonesia, as they see them as kind of like their strange Asian cousins. Indonesians make up the largest group of pilgrims for the Hajj in Mecca. However, there has been some controversy with Saudi Arabia in regards to migrant worker abuse and death sentences. Since then, Indonesia dramatically decreased its expat programs. The US, the Netherlands, and Australia are kind of like their biggest non-Asian supporters. In addition to trade and business, the US played a huge role in Indonesia's independence, and they worked closely during Cold War times. The Netherlands still holds close ties to Indonesia despite post-colonial bitterness. Plus, tons of Indonesians live in the Netherlands. To this day, they have the second largest population of Indonesians outside of Indonesia after Malaysia at nearly 2 million. Australia gives some of the most aid to Indonesia, especially after catastrophe incidents. And even though there are some controversies involving immigration and attacks on Australians abroad, they still share close ties generally. Now, Indonesia and Malaysia are kind of like the Colombia and Venezuela of Southeast Asia.
I don't know
like
about that.
Twins separated at birth and have a strange love-hate relationship. Malays accuse Indonesians of stealing their culture and language. Indonesians accuse them of not being grateful for all their help during war times. But when they actually meet up as people,
the thing that make us like hate each other, because somehow Malaysia steal our culture. Especially, I remember it was like wayang kulit, and also Reog Ponorogo, because it was like originally from Indonesia. But I'm okay with like nasi lemak or the language of Malay, because we also share the same language, and also Malay is the root of Indonesian language. So it's kind of complicated, to be honest, but that's how we hate each other. But sometimes they claim that Indonesia also steal their culture, but I'm not sure about that. But we can't really argue about that, because we share the same land. Yeah.
It's like they're totally brothers. Nonetheless, most Indonesians I talk to have said Japan is probably their best friend, which is funny because Japan kind of
Yeah.
really messed things up
That's
during
funny.
World War II. Nonetheless, they've moved on, and today Japan makes up the largest export partner. Tourists flock in year-round, and the two have been building each other up for over half a century. In conclusion,
Yes.
Indonesia's people are very much like their islands, numerous with lush, colorful, strange diversity. Sometimes a
Yes.
cyclone, earthquake, or volcano of controversy erupts, but at the end of the day, they still flourish together as one. Stay tuned.
Yes.
Iran is coming up next.
Yeah, that's how it is. So, as far as I know, when I asked my international friends, like around the world, they only know Bali, which is kind of make me sad. But I know why, because Bali is a very popular destination in Indonesia for foreigners. But I think there are more places like in Indonesia that is beautiful as much as in Bali. So for a few years, the late few years, I've been traveling with, especially with my family, and or sometimes my sister or my brother, and we traveled like just some nearby destinations, and it's really amazing actually, because we didn't know that we have so many destinations, even even though it's really close to the city. So sometimes I want to go like anywhere around Indonesia, because I still like hunting the destinations around Indonesia, and it's not only around Cirebon but also like in Kuningan, Majalengka, Banyuwangi, Malang, and so on. And so far my favorite destination is Yogyakarta, which makes me fall in love like every time I go there. And I once went there like maybe in 2014, and it was for a school trip, and it was really nice because it was my first, I think it was my first time going to the zoo. But then I remember that it was like the second time. So yeah, and that's maybe that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and for geographic now, I hope you can evaluate the video, especially the pronunciation, because it's because I know that in every country they have like different pronunciation, but maybe you can try to observe more about the pronunciation of some places that you would mention on the video. So yeah, and I hope you guys like it, and bye bye. They rent a house, something like that. They rent a house, middle Java. No. So, but sadly, yeah.